Okay, thank you. Let's look at the scriptures. Let's look at the words of Luke chapter 16. Starting from verse 11. Chapter 15, verse 11. Luke chapter 15, verse 11. If you found it, I'll begin reading. And he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that fall to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his field to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. And when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him, and had compassion, and ran, and fell on his neck, and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his elder son was in the field, and he came and drew nigh to this house, and he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants, and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry, and he would not go in. Therefore came out his father, and entreated him. And he answering said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I may make merry with my friends. But as soon as thy son was come, thou devoured thy living with harlots, and thou killed him for the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and we be glad, for this my brother was dead and is alive again, is lost and is found. Right through there. And this is the story of the prodigal son, which is a parable by Jesus. And the story of the prodigal son, which we say oftentimes. And so amongst literature, because within the short frame of words, so many things are included, and therefore many literalists have already considered this work of art to be the best of all. And so he has drawn the most dark aspect of it, and the most darkest part is that the son, he took the money and he went out into the pig pen, and eventually there was nowhere where he was able to eat, and the state where he was starving to death. And on the opposite end, it also has drawn the most bright side of it. And that was when the son had returned to the father, and that's when he was able to receive the sandals on his feet, and also a ring on his hand, and also good clothes, and also the fatted calf. This is the most brightest image of all. And therefore, for all of us, when we return unto God, and the life of us where we are able to rejoice and also be happy, returning unto God. However, many people are constantly being deceived by Satan, and people think to themselves that when they leave God, they can still make well, and they're able to do well. And they always end up failing, and they come back to the Father. And it's a story about how they're able to gain true happiness that way. And so if you look at the story, and I'm pretty sure many people they're asking for their father, "Oh, father, give me the portion of goods. I can go out." And then as soon as that portion of good is given, there are many people that will go out and live a riotous life. And in America, people that get the lottery, people who win the lottery overnight, what they did was they started to look into sort of how they lived on afterwards. And they did research on this. And so people think to themselves that without money, they're miserable. But there are many more instances where people become much more miserable by living, by having all that money. And so this person, he starts to receive millions of dollars overnight as he wins the lottery. And before he used to live a diligent life, but as soon as he wins that lottery, then he starts to have all sorts of desires, and it drives him nuts to think, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And eventually he stands on top of debt and he ends up being an alcoholic. Everyone, if I look back at my own life, let's say, for example, if God, he were to hand unto me, let's say he only gave me like $500 million. And so, of course, I'll be able to go out sending missionaries and also build mission centers, this and that. But the thing is that life would be very complicated. I would be very complicated. And also, I think, oh, it's not enough money. Oh, I still think, oh, maybe people are going to take my money. And so that's what I would be. I would be very complicated. And of course, we do need money in our lives, but people that experience difficulties without money, actually, there are much more instances where people experience many more difficulties because of money. And so people are actually very complicated, and also they have a big dilemma because of it. Eventually, they end up going into riotous lives and they end up sinning, and also they end up getting into all this mess. So when you look at it, in actuality, the life of us where we are living inside the Father and the life that is outside of the Father. When we're living just inside the Father, of course, everything is ordinary and it seems all fine. But when there is a life difficulty or hardship, the Father, he ends up, fixing all that. And also, when we obey to the Father, and also if he says, hey, go out and plow the land, then we go out and plow the land, and it becomes a very happy and also peaceful life. Oh, but let's say the father, he's not going to live on forever. So if he were to pass away, then, I need to make my life, I need to be able to prepare my own life and also get money on my own. Of course, these are all good thoughts. But this son, he wanted to get the father's money and wanted to go out and live a diligent life. However, he, rather than living a diligent life, he ends up falling into the lust, the temptation of women, and then he ends up losing all of that money. And so then in terms of temptation, because I really like to swim. And so then I was at the pine fields, the Songo pine fields, and then I was trying to pass through this river. And so then as I was swimming, trying to get across through that river, and then I thought to myself, oh, it seems like I'm right around by the hill, but I look up and I think, oh, there's no hill here. What's going on? Did someone take the hill away, remove it? And so then I only came around halfway. But then I saw there's a big river that's passing by, and then there's another river that's coming in. And as another little small river comes in together, it was a whirlpool that began to form, and I was caught up in this whirlpool. And so then I think to myself, oh, I need to get out of this whirlpool. I need to get out of it. How do I get out of this? So the thing is, I tried swimming and also I tried to, trying to get across a little bit, but there was no way that I could. And I tried everything which I could to try to be able to get across, and I started doing it for about 10 minutes or so. But there was no way that I was able to get across that whirlpool. I'm sorry to say, but, I am of age, but after about 10 minutes or so, all that energy and that power, it just got sucked out of me. And so right then, there was a thought that came into me was, oh, this is the way that you could end up dying. And so then, as I was just drifting there and also just, And so then I started saying, I asked the people in the boat over there, "Oh, please, can you come save me over here?" The boat, because it has a strong propeller, it has nothing, it's not affected by the whirlpool at all. So even in terms of voice fishing, if people they have an ordinary mindset, it's all fine and good. But the thing is that when you go through the voice fishing, when you get caught up inside this insecurity thinking, "Oh, I'm losing my money," and that's when people are unable to have normal thought process. And so one day I was also caught up by voice fishing, and it was around the Saturday, and it was a morning time, and I received a phone call saying, "Oh, you're Mr. Oksu Park, right?" I said, "Yes." From Lotte department store, they said that there was, I have my card, but then you had made a purchase over there for about $300. And so I said, "Oh, how about your wife? My wife is right next to me." I said, "Oh, this is a little strange. Should we report this to the police?" "Well, you can report it to the police, and that's fine." But then right after 5 minutes later, the police called me. And so before there was an incident, and so then I called the police, and then we got a response 1 year later. And so then the thing is, the police called me just 5 minutes afterwards. They said, "Oh, have you ever given your personal, social security number anywhere?" And so, "Oh, it seems like somebody has penetrated um into your account, into your bank account." And so they said that, "Hey, where's the nearest bank that's nearby you? If you take your bank account and also your personal information, well, there's a bus terminal there." And then, they said, "Yeah, please, can you come on over to there?" As I was being led, I thought to myself, I am a little old, and actually I'm not too smart. And I felt a little insecure for me to be able to go by myself. And so I called Pastor Kim Sung-un. "Is there any brother that's working at the bank?" And so I says, "Oh, can you ask that brother to be able to come over to the bank?" And so then as I was walking, and then there was a police station along the big road. I thought, "Oh, I can go in there and ask them." As, "What brings you here, old man?" And he says, "Oh, there's one thing that I want to ask you." And then I talked to him about this. They said right away, "Oh, that's a fraud. Don't go there." And so I said, "Oh, that's right." And right away I got a call. "Oh, are you almost there?" "I'm still on the way over there." And then, "Oh, right now I just received a call. Would you like to get it?" It says, "Hey, hey, who are you? Who are you?" It says, "Who are you?" "I'm the policeman," he said. Right away he hung up the phone. And so then the policeman, he wanted to curse at him, but there was no way because already he hung up on the other end. And right after he hung up, Pastor Kim Sung-woo and also Brother Oh Juno, they were just passing through. Our honorable Pastor Park, he's about to be caught up by voice fishing, so he went against, all the traffic laws and just went raced there as soon as possible. The thing is, when you get caught up by voice fishing, you're not able to have any other thought. And so already the bank is, when you think about it, various things, the fact that the policeman called me 5 minutes later, and also the fact that it's a Saturday afternoon and the bank's already closed. But the thing is that Satan, everyone, he is a very existence that knows most about this, and he thinks most about it. So in terms of faith, when we get across from time to time, the most thankful thing, there were from time to time incidents where I was also tempted in terms of money. But every time that happened, the Lord, He's always helping me, and also He's always with me. I always thought to myself, is this really fitting? It's not because I'm not smart or anything, but when I was in the military, and so regarding, and so depending on how they grade you, they're gonna send you out to the outskirts, and so towards to the front lines, and so they are able to exempt about 25 people or so. And even if, let's say, that they just work up a little few numbers here and there, and also they can just change your ranking from 1 through 5 a little bit, and they can prevent you from being able to go towards the front lines. But I was very close towards Jesus, and I felt inside of my heart that Jesus is happy with this. And so for Jesus is with me, and there was no way that I could be able to do that. Of course, it's not that I always lived a clean life and there were times that I made mistakes, but the fact that Jesus is with me, that if I had were to deceive Jesus this time around, then how would I be able to go to him next time around and then ask him in prayer and receive an answer that way? So the thing is, in terms of the military, people they just take it natural for you to steal, you know, gloves or anything like that. And so then overnight, I can just go act like I'm going to the restroom, and then after that, I can just remove someone's glove and then move it over to my side. And let's say that you may not get caught, but if you were to get caught, then how would you be able to preach the gospel within the barracks? So everyone, it's not that I'm a person who witnessed very well, but I went to Apgokdong and Sister Sonursun received salvation for the very first time, and I was so happy and so I rejoiced so much. And afterwards, I went to Changpali and also Brother Shimjae, Brother Kim Jong. These people they started to receive salvation, and up until now, these many people who said that they were sinners, all of a sudden now they receive salvation. They're able to become one-hearted, and when I see how they're sacrificing and also living their lives that way, it brought so much happiness unto my heart. And so after, as I was in Changpali at the time, there was about 30 or 40 people or so that received salvation, and there was more than 40 people who came out to our church at the time. And so when I think about those things, and so because let's say that I were to disappoint the Lord and also still continue to witness, will I be able to do such things like that? Even though I have temptations here and there, I was able to still overcome all those temptations. And so then there's a lot of people who were asking and also calling in for to not be sent over to the front lines. And so what they do is they grade and also they rank people. They did this on Friday and then on Saturday morning. And so as soon as this is reported, and they what they do is they choose the ranks between 1 through 5, and then they allow him to be able to go according to whichever base they prefer. So at any time, you can just go ahead, just use an eraser and just change up the numbers here and there, and I can work up the numbers and then be able to not go over to the front lines. I can work out whichever I want. However, when I was inside the military, really, my heart was so pure before the Lord. I did not want to use any humanistic methods at all, and everything was through God, and therefore I was not able to do that at all, not even once. So there was an instructor, and also I was a person who was over, and they said, "Hey, make Osu Park make number one, rank number one." And then it says, make him number one. And so I said, no, I can't do that. Well, he says, and I said, officer, if you're going to do that, you go ahead, you can do that. And he said, do you want to die? He asked me. I said, officer, if I say this over to the head officers, you will be in a lot of difficulty. I don't think you can do this. And he says, hey, little punk, we'll see how. But then no matter how much he looks at me, there's nothing that I did wrong. I would hope, if he would look at me often, actually. So at that time, really, I was so bold about it. Let's say even if I were to do that even once. So as soon as I came out of the military, Jesus who helped me in the military, if he were to continue helping me, even if I were to end up in the Sahara Desert, I could still live a very happy life. Even if I were living in Antarctica, I would live a very happy life. And of course, there are difficulties. Of course, there are hardships here and there. There are times that there were difficulties and also problems, but never once has the Lord ever turned his face against me. At the time when I was still dying, almost doing due to the charcoal gas. Eventually, even when we had our son Younguk, even God, He helped us and also was with us, and He was always near us at all times. Of course, I fall into my own ways and also I fall into my own thoughts, but then when I open up the Bible from time to time, then I can see so clearly that the Lord is with me. And even if the world is all right, there's no way for me to be able to live my life having to disappoint the Lord. And therefore, people that have received salvation also inside of our church, not just the formidable things, not just in terms of formality, but a lot of people inside of our church, they're just like this prodigal son who left the father. In terms of the prodigal son story, he thought that there was going to be pleasures and also happiness and also joy, but that pleasure eventually all changed into sadness, into regret, into all sorts of difficulties, and also to despair. The reason why He has given us the story is because He is with us and He loves us. And the second son, when he returned back to the father's house, everything was already then organized. And this is what was so amazing to me. 1962, when I received salvation, and I had many problems in my life. And for about 2 years after I received salvation, all the debt which I had and all the difficulties which I had, everything became organized. And the thing is that I was also preaching the gospel within the missionary school, and I didn't know exactly how to be able to preach the gospel well here and there, and also I always end up, not keeping the time, this such and such. And so then, even then, inside of my heart, because there was the Lord inside of my heart, I was so joyful and I was so thankful inside of my heart. When I was even in Apgoktong, there was not a single place which I could rely upon, and there was not a single place which I could lean to. But even still, then, the Lord, He has never forsaken me. He has always heard my prayer, and I was always able to spend a close time with Him. Everyone during trials, a lot of people they end up faking documents and they lie here and there. So, as the Lord, He was with me. I felt inside of my heart that He would never allow me to stand in a position where I would be at loss. And it's not because I'm a kind and also I'm a very good person, but because Jesus inside of me, He's so holy, He's so pure and clean. Therefore, if that Jesus is leading me, then not a single thing would end up being a problem inside of my life. And not only that, but also, as I'm old, I don't know exactly when I'm gonna when I'm gonna die. But let's say that if I were to die, 10 or 20, 30 years, very precisely, I can see so clearly that the Lord, He is holding onto my life. And therefore, because I can witness well, or I'm able to minister well, I'm able to do a lot of things well. But it's not that, because we are all the sons of the Father God. And so then that son, even when he came back to his father, he was still a son unto him. And so, even to the one that the father never said once, "Hey, why did you do that?" Even when he returned unto his father, having wasted everything, he says, "Hey, bring the best robe, put it on him, put the ring on his finger, and put shoes on his feet." And these words, they were so great. Everyone in front of the people of the world, they say that they keep a cold face. The thing is that how can you do that? How can you come back to me? But the Lord instead, He says, "No, return unto me. Come home, come home." And therefore, no matter what sin we may have committed, no matter what evil we may have done, but if we are able to just return unto the Lord, if we're able to just simply return unto the Lord, then I felt inside of my heart that we will be so thankful before the Lord. And therefore, the most central part of this is when you're outside of the Father, no matter how wise and no matter how good and also how great you may be, you will eventually receive destruction. But when you have entered into the Father, no matter how difficult and also difficult and hard it may be, nothing at all would end up being a problem. And this is simply what the Bible is trying to tell us. Everyone, it's not that you simply prayed well that you're able to be for the Father. It's not because you gave a lot of offering or you did this and that that you're able to be before the Father. But no matter what hardship we may have, harm we may have caused, when we run towards the Father and also we run in His direction, then He continues to bestow great power and also great works inside of our life. And this is what I'm so thankful about inside of my heart before the Lord. If the Lord, as He's working through us, and even God, in terms as the Son is returned, and so then he's going to have to lose his good clothes and also have to lose sandals and also lose the ring. Do you think that that's going to be a loss? No, it's not a loss to him. It's happiness to him. It's great happiness and joy unto him. Oh, that little troublemaker, he's back here. But no, it's not that. But he actually so happy for the fact that my son, he was lost and is found again. Therefore, let us not keep any sort of distance inside of our heart before the Lord. Let us not live any sort of dark life before the Lord. And if we can unite our heart before the Lord, and that is what it means to be within the Father's house. And that heart which was departed from the Father, as it can return to Him. And by following the words of the Father, and we live a life to obey Him, then surely the Lord, He will protect and also keep every part of my life. And this is what we can be so thankful about inside of our hearts. Everyone, from time to time inside of our church, in terms of people, brothers and also sisters, they come over to me and they discuss about having to give birth to a child. And so then as I was living inside of a church, it was a time when my son got married, and then he was uh, right around the time my son, he was just about to get married. And right then IYF just started, and there was a lot of young female sisters and also students whom I thought, oh, it'd be great for these people. But one day I called my wife over and I said, it's about time for Youngkook, our son, to get married. And I told my wife, I said, hey honey, our Youngkook this time around, let us not choose who the daughter-in-law will be. Let us receive whoever God chooses for us. And therefore, if there's any sister that may seem good to you, you need to close your eyes, and I will also close my eyes as well. And one thing that I feared the most was there are a lot of precious sisters here and there, but people are still people. In one aspect, in one part of them, it seems very beautiful and good, but another aspect, another side, you may think, oh, why are they like that? And so then my daughter-in-law, it's not like I could always fight or do something like that, but and so in terms of gaining our daughter-in-law, truly, the Lord, I want for Jesus to allow this, for Jesus to provide. So then what I did was I told my wife, I said, hey honey, in terms of Youngkook, for Youngkook's marriage, this is what I had thought regarding the marriage. No matter how beautiful or how good it may be, but you should not place your hands at all on this. You need to wait upon how the Lord will provide. My wife says, oh yeah, sure, let's do that. And so then I called my son over as well, and I said, hey, it's about time for you to get married now. And this is what your father had thought. And you also need to not choose. And you need to make it so that the Lord chooses for you who you need to get married. And so we just waited then. But then the one that was supposed to be our daughter-in-law, she grew up in Brazil. She was able to pass through this very big federal exam. And so right after that, she had passed this federal exam eventually. Hey, it seems the pastor there in Brazil said, it'd be good if you can go to Korea and be able to receive some training and learn about spiritual life. And so then she came and lived at the house. And so I was living in the seventh floor at the time. And so at the time, she was living even in a lower floor with Pastor Kim Sung-un. And so I never really had the opportunity to be able to see her at all. And so then when I would go over to Brazil, several times she would translate it right next to me. But never once ever even dreamt or even thought about how she was going to be end up being my daughter-in-law. So she was just there translating here and there. And it was right around the time in terms of marriage, and then Pastor Kim Sung-un came over to me and says, in terms of Jungkook's marriage, shouldn't he get married? Oh yeah, of course, it's around time that he should get married. How about Chonga from Brazil? And the thing is that this is not something which I can decide. The servant of God is saying unto me, and I said, I will follow it, whatever you say. And also, how much would I be able to know? Just by looking, I can just look at their face expression and also see how tall, how short they are. And so then I heard that my son didn't really like, and so then because she has actually broad shoulders, and because she used to swim a lot, and so nowadays she doesn't swim, but so her shoulder sort of came in, and so then he was so shocked to see that. But then my son, then he eventually just obeyed before the Lord. And so then right after these two got married, and then I called over Chonga and I said, hey Chonga, there's a lot of instances and times where mother-in-law and also the daughter-in-law get into fights and also difficulties. But I said that I never seen the two of you get into difficulty. And then he says, but mother-in-law is so good. No, I know your mother-in-law. Yeah, she is a good wife. She's a good person, but she's very picky. And he said, no, mother-in-law really treats me very well. And so when I see aspects like that and parts of that, the things which were done through me and the things which were done through Jesus, I could see there's a big difference. And therefore, when we do the mind education, there is a power to think deeply. When we have the first dimensional thought, people usually just take care and also decide according to the first dimension. But the thing is, you leave that first dimension of thought, and then you go into the second dimension of thought. You look at it from a different angle, and then you can think from a way better angle. When you look at it from a third dimension, even more, you're able to make a way better decision. When people understand and also even build homes. And so I went to Cheonan, and so there was a certain brother that was there that was building a chapel or such, and he was just laying the foundation or such. But and so one and so then when you build, you're supposed to build it on top of the mountain, and so towards the lower end, you can make it into a good field or do something else towards. But the thing is, it's right at the bottom of the mountain, and so right at the bottom of the hill. And I thought, oh, we need to tear it down. We need to tear it down. But then I just heard all the time that you're past the park. You're so picky. So I just hesitated, and there was Elder Shinchano that was right next to me, and I asked him, what should we do? About one third has already been built. Let's just do it. And so we just went forward with it. But Elder Shinchano, when I look at, of course his advice was good, but if we were to take that down and then be able to build it on top, then there's no moisture that comes in, and also it's so much better in terms of visibility, and also towards the bottom area we can build a big field. And so then we're trying to build a big school. We thought and thought, and so we end up having to stop the work. So when you have the first dimension of thought and the second dimension of thought, of course, people, they don't know anything about construction, but when you look at it and also when you look at how things are being done, and that's how you get to learn and also begin to look into things one by one. And so when you look at it from the first dimensional thought, your thoughts are of course 100% right. But you leave that thought aside and you look at it from a second dimension, and of course you become closer to the word, and then it becomes a much more better method. Rather than his own thought, when you look into the thought of Jesus, then it's so much better that way. Therefore, the prodigal son, it says that because he left the father's house and he went out into his own way. One thing that we must know very precisely is that We need to be able to change up a little bit of our own thoughts. When I have this kind of thought, I want to do this and I want to do that. And so then, of course, in terms of preparing food, this and that, it's not like we have to be able to worry, about 2 to 4 days or so. We can just, whatever, when we're hungry, we can just eat whatever we want. And also, depending on how our health is, we can just choose better types of food for us. However, in terms of living life, though, you're not just living according to your own spontaneous thought, but there is a certain thought and a frame that is being spoken about inside the Bible. If you look into the words of Luke chapter 15, the life of you living inside the Father and the life of you living outside of the Father, it's totally different. Therefore, even if you were to believe Jesus, people that do not know deeply about the Bible, because they're unable to look through the heart of the Lord, they eventually end up following whichever path is good to them. And they also follow these ambitions. And so then, when I used to go to elementary school, so there was a fisherman that used to live a very, very poor and also difficult life. And so then, one day he casted out his net into the sea, and he was able to catch a lot of goldfish. And so then there was a lot of goldfish, and so they came in. And they said, "Oh, grandpa, please let me go, let me go. And the next time around, we will repay you." And so then they just felt sorry for the goldfish, and so they let him go. And so they said, "Oh, thank you," and they went back into the sea. But then after he came home, and so then told the grandma, and so then the grandma got so angry, the wife. You should have at least asked for like a water pot or something. You can't just let them go like that. Why did you do that? So then this old man, he said, "Hey, goldfish, oh, goldfish," and the goldfish came out. "This is what my wife wants, and so can you just give me at least a water pot?" He says, "Okay," and they went down. There was a nice water pot that was there at the house when he returned. So then "Oh, if you were gonna ask for a water pot, then you should have just asked for a big house and nice place to be able to live." And so that's when the wife just yelled at the old man. And so then the old man went to the sea again. "Hey, goldfish, goldfish, and this is what my wife wants." And he says she wants a house. And he says, "Oh, okay." And so then right when he came out of that, he saw there was a big house already there. "Oh, I need this and that." And later on, "I want to become the king of the sea. I want to become the king of everything. I want to become the king of the land. I want to become the king of the sea." And it says, "Okay, go fish, go fish. This is what my wife wants." So she wants to become the queen of the sea and also the queen of the land, the queen of everything, the king of everything. And then the goldfish listened to everything. All of a sudden, came back to the sea. After that, everything was done, and there was just a broken, jar that was right next to them. You never had stuff like this inside of your own. Did you ever hear a story about this inside of your own textbooks? And I'm old, so when I was young, we used to have stories like this inside of our textbook. People's ambitions, what it does is these ambitions, they really ruins people and also brings them into ruins. Therefore, we can just say ambitions. Running in certain direction is not something that's bad. However, truly Jesus Christ, who was crucified on the cross and he died for me, having the heart to love the Lord, living the life that is for the Lord and also for the gospel, really it's incomparable to one another. And so when we live our lives as there was a student, the college students, he said, "Oh, I don't want to go into the ministry, but do I have to go into missionary school?" I don't understand that, because when I was 19 at that time, really, when you just put everybody, let's say all 19-year-olds were to be ranked, I was probably towards one or two towards the end. And so when I was around that age, I read the Bible so many times. I used to just read, f- you know, I used to just read novels before, but eventually it was very difficult for me to be able to get any novels. But I just started reading the Bible afterwards. When I read through the words of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. And after I read it a few times and I read the Bible tens of times and eventually was able to see the structure of the Bible and I was able to see the heart of God through that. When there, what I was able to discover was the heart of God that's inside the Bible. It's so beautiful, it's so clean, and it's so good. But I was so dirty, filthy, and I was able to see myself who was such a conniving person. When I looked at the Bible for the very first time, that's what I saw for the very first time. No matter what I read and no matter what I'm looking at, I can see that the Lord, He's full of love and He's full of so much compassion. He's a God of forgiveness. And so I'm a person that is not able to forgive in any sort of way, and I always get angry and also yell at people, this and that. And this is what I came to realize. And so then, even if I were to become great, how great of the position would that be? So from the beginning, I knew exactly that I was not a good person. Therefore, it was not difficult for me to be able to break my thoughts at all. It was not difficult for me to be able to break my thoughts at all because I have no wisdom at all whatsoever. Therefore, I had to then open up the Bible and I was able to then receive the wisdom that came from the Lord. And as I continue, as time passes, I'm getting closer and closer to the Father's house. And so as I'm getting older, I even think about death. When I think about death, actually, it's very much fun. I'm 77, and so let's say that I were to live 3 more years, I'm going to be 80. Let's say when I were to die, what's going to be happening and how would I die? For 80 years, the fact that I lived for the gospel, whether I lived well or no, I'm just so thankful in front of God for that. And most especially for the past year. And this year, of course, it's only been about a month since this year started. But the fact that we could preach the gospel to numerous people. And also, even today, I'm very lacking and also I'm very weak. But when I think about how I can go to preach the gospel, I'm so thankful inside of my heart. Everyone, I get so excited when I'm preaching the gospel. Most people they preach for about 1 hour, and I preach about 1 hour 30, 2 hours, 2 hour 30, and so when I'm preaching the gospel, I don't get the cold even when I have the cold, and so then after I preach the gospel, then the cold comes back to me. Even as I have the cough and I'm preaching the gospel, the cough's not there, and I have so many things which just spill out of me, just start to gush out of me of wanting to say this and that, and how these people react when I'm talking regarding about the forgiveness of sins. People are just staring, glaring at me, and then as the word begins to unravel and also begin to stick inside their hearts. And of course, these are not difficult words at all. They're not difficult words at all. As soon as they empty themselves, they're able to understand immediately. And they get so shocked. Oh, this is one thing that I did not know about. And they're able to rejoice and they're able to dance and they can be so touched about this and so moved. When I see such things in such images, I get so thankful inside of my heart. When the second son returned to the father's house, he was so joyful. And this one sinner, as he returns back, how happy would he have been? However, how joyful would he have been when 100 sinners came and also 1,000 sinners return? For me, 1,000s, 2,000s, last year, during the time that we had, in front of 100,000 people, I was able to preach the gospel for 90 minutes when we did the end of the year service. And so, of course, there's no way for me to be able to test and see whether if all they receive salvation. But the fact that there's nothing more precious than being able to preach the gospel like this to a person like me who is nothing and also who is in the humblest, lowest of places. The fact that he's opened up the way for me to be able to preach the gospel, that I'm so thankful, I'm so touched inside of my heart for. And so, as the older son, he doesn't even know about the father's heart. And so the fact that he just wasted his substance, and by doing that, it's not a problem at all. And just by the fact that he just returned safe and sound, he's so thankful and happy about that. Of course, at times, when I see people living inside a trial and also difficulty, I feel so bad for them. Truly, you could see so clearly that the Father, He has the heart of wanting for all of us to be able to return back unto Him. And therefore, when we return to the Father, all of my methods and also all of my ways have already been put to failure. And He's no longer the first son. He's no longer the second son of the old, but he's become a son that is much better than the first son now. He knows precisely his own evil. He knows that he has despised the Father, and he now has the heart that is ready to be able to serve the Father. Every time I look at the Father, every time I look at the Bible, I'm so thankful inside of my heart. Of course, I'm not good, but the fact that I'm at the Father's house and the fact that I'm able to preach the gospel here, it's such a thankful thing. Our church is a very interesting church, is that it's not that it's just a pastor who needs to preach. Even an elder can preach, is that right? Even a deacon can preach, is that right? And even an elementary student can preach. And even the person here for the very first time, he can preach. And even the sister who just testified, oh, this is how I receive salvation. And so she testifies like that. Just like that, everyone, our hearts can become closer to the Lord. And as the Lord continues to help us, and our hearts continue to become much more better, and also it becomes much more beneficial for us, rather than just coming to service for 1 hour and then going back. But if we can be able to share our hearts and also be able to share fellowship, our hearts become much more brighter. Then the way that which we start to think begins to become so much more different, and our hearts become much more closer to the Lord. And there was a time where I was very hungry, and I started praying for the Lord. I started praying for food before the Lord. And so then I started praying for about 1 hour. I said, "Oh God, please pray, please give me food." But then after about an hour, I started falling into prayer. And at that time, I always prayed about the people that are living inside of the South Pacific. What are they eating? What kind of clothes do they wear? Who is going to be able to preach the gospel to them? Please help us so that we can preach the gospel to them. The many people that are in the lands of Africa, these people are experiencing difficulty. We don't know what disease they have and what kind of lifestyle they have. Please let us send missionaries over there. And I would pray about these kinds of things, and I have so much strength. And as soon as I open my eyes, I think, oh, it's just a dream. Just a dream. And our church finances are very difficult. We have to pay this, we have to pay that. We don't even have money for this and that. What do you mean? Broadcast mission and also going over to South Pacific. It's just a dream. But I experienced this 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and I was able to realize that it's not me that's praying, but it's the Lord who's leading my prayer. And then the Lord, He's going to fulfill this prayer. We also received, contact from the South Pacific. There was a prime minister from the South Pacific that had contacted wanting to meet us. And so allowing us to be able to do the mind education like this. And also when we do the mind education, we start doing the mind education to the government officials. Most important thing about mind education is to think deeply. When you start to think deeply, this is what I talk about to people. Hyundai was able to sell off so many cars in America. You know how they were able to sell off their cars in America? Is that in America, when a person buys a new car, they only give 2 years warranty, and they only give it up to 20,000 miles. But with Hyundai Motors, they've made up their minds and determined not to be able to provide cars that never break down. So then, of course, you can't really think. There's no way to think about that. But the thing is, when you think deeply about it, then you can see right away. You can see right away that the parts that break down the most, those are the parts. What are the parts that get sold the most? They realize that those are the parts that are, that are being broken down the most. So they start thinking deep about that, and they start to fix out all those parts, and then it is not broken. Pastor Yomo, he has driven his Hyundai car for about 12 years. He's never broken down once. So then what they did was other cars, 20,000 miles with 2 years of warranty. But with Hyundai Motors, they go up to 100,000 miles with 10-year warranty. And that's how they started letting out. And so because and so it costs a lot of manpower to be able to manufacture cars. And so all the people in America, they start laughing, but they realize that Hyundai is the car that doesn't break down at all. You cannot find any repair shops in Seoul. I say that let's see if there's any part shops in here around Seoul. There's so many car shops that are around there trying to fix cars, but with Hyundai, you never get broken. When you think deeply about it, then you're able to figure it out right away. You think to yourself, "Oh, how is it possible to be able to make manufacture a car that doesn't break down?" But the thing is, when you take a part and you see that it's being sold a lot, you realize that it's being broken, so you fix that part. And so really in America, what they do is they give 10-year warranty. And it costs a lot of money to be able to try to bring in people to manpower. And I tell them that this is what you call the mind education. We don't have petroleum that is in our land and in Korea. And so then when you get octane level is about 95. And so then in Korea, when you get it, octane level is 97. And so then I can feel really how bad the oil petroleum is that is in America. We don't even have one drop of petroleum that comes out, but we're able to buy so much of that, and then the remaining of it we're able to put on asphalt, and so that's how we have asphalt here in Korea. And so the thing is, how we were able to live well is because we had thought deeply. So even in terms of spiritual life, we think deeply and deeply and deeply. We just don't come out for the Sunday service, but oh, these are some parts about me. Oh, these are some of these dark parts which I have to get rid of, and then I need to continue to form a part inside of me that I can become closer to the Lord. And you become people of the Lord. Therefore, everyone, you having to keep your own life, and also when you compare yourself to the Lord, when the Lord is taking care of your later years, really it's incomparable. And we're continuing to make and publish some mind education books. And so there's a new book that we are trying to make. So we're trying to make a comic book that is based on the Bible. And so then it's very difficult for people to read the Bible. But the thing is, just within 2 days that people are able to use this comic book. I've seen a lot of comic books until now. But then so many of them are all fake, and it's not right according to what it's supposed to be, according to the Bible. I felt so strongly inside of my heart that I informed the team that we were able to create a comic book team. And so then when we make this new comic book that is based on the Bible, and so then we're trying to publish this in America. And when we can sell it in America very well, we're gonna start publishing it also in Korea. And then also I wanted to also even go and sell it even to other Christian countries, and then eventually even to Israel as well. Last time around during the Christmas cantata tour, I was able to donate 100,000 books free to them. I gave it all to each and every person that attended the cantata. And so these people, they're very honest because they say that, oh, we are a family of 2. So can you please just give us one? And then the family of 4, just give us one. Because they became so popular and so this time around, I told them, hey, you're going to have to pay $12 each. And so then we sent out, and they requested for 85,000 copies. And so now this time around, we can make a lot of money through this. It's not like I'm interested in money, but the thing is, I wanted to give 100,000 copies for free to them. And these people, they read through the book, and this pastor, he read through it. And he says, hey, can you get at least just 200? I want to have all of our church members able to read through this. And so then the popularity rises so quickly. Everything which we do, it's all for the gospel. Even that is preaching the gospel. It's such a good thing. Therefore, we're able to live our lives through the Lord, and our lives continue to become different. Everyone, your life will become glorious before the Lord, and it will just we can be so sure that it will be such a beautiful and also glorious life before the Lord. And of course, there were so many times there are difficulties, but never once have I regretted. And the fact that I'm so thankful to the Lord that has allowed me to stand before everyone in this pulpit. And now there's so many governments and also so many countries that are asking me to be able to come and to give the mind lecture. Of course, I feel a little body ache, and also I feel a little difficult. But when I stand up in the pulpit, I'm not difficult or I'm not sick at all. I'm so joyful and happy when I see these people receiving salvation. I'm a person that should have fallen into the hellfire, but I'm so thankful inside of my heart before the Lord. And just by the fact that He saved me from sin, even if I risk my give my entire life to God, it would not be a loss. And I'm so thankful for the Lord that is continuing to open up ways unto me. Everyone's salvation has not just been given, but it was by the blood of Jesus, and it was also through the gospel preachers. And so I hope that you would also give your heart for the gospel preachers, and also when you live for the gospel, is one person receives salvation, and then also two people can receive salvation, and if eventually 10 people can receive salvation, if you pour your heart even more, and 20 people can receive salvation. Don't just live however it's been done. What year is it now? 2020 to 2020, right? So in terms of 2020, and so this year, I hope that all of us are able to preach the gospel very powerfully, and I hope that in this year many people are able to arise for the gospel. Let us pray. At this time, we'll have a time to pray individually.